What's
What's
everyone? Shihan
what's
Sean, how you going? Welcome
what's
back to the
good, mate?
Kyokushin Shuffle and another episode of the Japan Chronicles. We're on fire here. So,
Yeah,
um,
mate.
look, we've got our calendars working out so far. I'm away for a bit coming up, and Shihan Sean is flat out as well. So we're very fortunate to get your time once again. And today's episode is going to be really, really interesting, deep diving into your session with Shihan Yui there in the back. So,
Yep.
Shihan, there's going to be a lot of you talking. There's probably going to be questions back from me just of interest and for you to, I guess, explain a little bit more. But look forward to this episode, Shihan. You've wanted to do this for a while because you've done certain training sessions with Shihan Yui and interpreting, but fresh off the top of last week, which you did
Yep.
3 hours nearly of his interpretation. Here we go. Look forward to it.
Okay, mate. Yeah, good. So yeah, as we excuse me, as we sort of reflected on the trip that's just been, and I think now we're back to a bit of normality. My brain has sort of decided to return to me after it was melted over that weekend. But
Sure.
yeah, as I said before, on your grading day, I was in Honbu from about 10 o'clock in the morning onwards. The first session was, doing the interpreting for Shihan Yui. We've talked about him in the past. For those that don't know him, or just to remind you of who he was an Uchi-Deshi of Sosai's, and then later became, if anyone's read Shihan Judd Reed's book, he affectionately referred to him as the Ranger. He was the dormitory master. He was Sosai's runabout for many years. There's many photos online. You see him carrying Sosai's briefcase, and he's actually got it now. He's got Sosai's
How good.
briefcase. He was able to get that before it got into the hands of anyone else, and he's getting it restored, so he might be using it. But yeah, no, it was great. We met up. There was about 11 or 12 participants. There was 3 or 4 from overseas, and the rest were a mixture of Japanese or people based in Japan. And this goes back to maybe 2016, or well, before that. My history with
Right. Right.
Yui Shihan goes back to the days of my involvement with Aiko Sosai, which we won't go too much into, but he also tried to assist them for a year or two. So we met up there, worked well together there. He would run international gradings, etc., and I would do the interpreting for him. And then in 2016, a bunch of Kiwis came over, came to the dojo here in Nagoya for its official opening after the Seoul Kyokushin World Champs. And then we went up to Tokyo, and one of the part of that visit was to go
Nice.
out to Yui Shihan's dojo in Tachikawa, which is a bed town outside of the metropolis, and
Okay. Okay.
had a good old sweat session there. But so I've met up with him a few times over the years, but this just reminded me just what a special human being is. Unfortunately, he's not too tech savvy, or he chooses not to be. He doesn't like to be interviewed online, but he has given me his blessing in sharing conversations and times like these training sessions we have together. In my own words, he said he trusts me to do the right thing there. So I thought it'd be a good time, just as part of our reflection on the trip just gone by, to talk about
Awesome.
what I got out of it. And he started off by saying that what he was going to do that day over the 3 hours was share what he, I guess, defines as one type of original Kyokushin. And he was very adamant about how he framed that. He said, look, he started off by explaining the different generations. He said, look, you've got your first generation Kyokushin karateka at the beginning.
Awesome.
It was Oyama Dojo, then it became Kyokushin Kaikan. He said, there's your front line. That's one generation. So the type of Kyokushin that they do, including our Hanshi in New Zealand, Doug Holloway, is one type of original Kyokushin. That's first generation
Gotcha.
Kyokushin.
Gotcha.
Then you go to the second generation, and you're talking about the likes of Hasegawa, Soshi, and etc., and
Right,
all of
right.
Yamazaki Shihan and Sato Shihan and all of those famous old names that you hear from the original Japan champs or the first world champs, etc. And he said, that's your second generation original Kyokushin. And then he said, then you've got your third generation, which is the Nakamura Shihans, the Sanpei Shihans, and so you've got all of these different ones. And then, they had their original Kyokushin, the Kyokushin they were taught, the Kyokushin that they did. And he said, so, he said, by no stretch of the imagination am I preaching that this is the one and only. He said, this is my interpretation of what I learned from the time.
Right.
And he framed it quite well. And I think he wasn't being diplomatic. He was just being brutally honest. He said, so what you do, and what, hopefully he said, what I can pass on to people is my experiences. But what you're doing now is original Kyokushin based on this point of time. He said,
Sure.
And he was very, I guess, respectful of that, mindful of that. And that's how he set the tone. And so he said, what, and then he went in a bit more by saying that, and I talked about this last time, he was the model for the original first, I guess, full-fledged Kyokushin Kyohon, it was called, or instruction manual on a VHS. We go back to those times. Nothing was uploaded back then. We had to buy that antique of a thing that
Yeah.
it would wear away. And so he was tasked with the responsibility of being the model for that and going through all the techniques, and that was on video for all the instructors around the world to kind of, Sosai then wanted to standardize a lot of things. And he said that the reason he was chosen was not because he was an exceptional karateka, and this is just him being humble.
Sure.
Because Sosai, he later on talked with Goda Shihan and said, why the hell have I been chosen? And Goda Shihan said, well, because you have the least sort of bad habits.
Okay.
You're a stock standard Kyokushin karateka, and that's probably why Sosai has chosen you, because you don't do things in your own way. You've done it just the way you've been told to do it, and Sosai sort of sees that as a good standard to use as a reference.
Beautiful.
So that, that was how it started. Then he just went through the basics, and he's very much a person that is trying to make people think why. And this is a tone he used throughout the session. He said, look, he said, today you're lucky. He said, I'm going to give you the answers, but in a way you're unlucky. He said, because Sosai would just tell us, okay, you're doing this wrong or that wrong, but he would never tell us how we should fix it.
Yeah.
The task was for us to work it out. And one big thing he's very picky about is body mechanics. And one thing he talks about, and if you ever do a training session with him, he brings this up all the time. So, for example, he says he wants you to be very aware of what your core is. And
Gotcha. I'm
going to jump to different parts of the
doubt.
session just to make sense of it all. But throughout the session, he'd be taking us through the basics, and we did Kihon, we did a bit of Idogeko, we did a little bit of kata at the end.
Nice.
But it was that old sort of view of, well, your Kihon is your base, and he talks about it being like a car engine. He said you can have this big motor, you can be tough and strong. And he said, but if you don't take care of all the individual parts, he says, if you don't oil them properly, then you can be as flashy as hell.
Yeah.
If you haven't got the basics there, you're gonna be faced with a bit of compromise, and that's where bad habits sort of sink in.
Sneak in.
So,
Yeah.
So everyone's standing there in Furodachi, and they got their hands out here and they're saying us. And he said, okay, us. He said, right, here's one. He said, That's it. He said, saying us. He goes, I don't want you to say us because of all these stripes on my belt. He said, us is a chance for you to train. And he goes, it means so many things. And he goes, but let's look at the body mechanics. And he goes, when he says, where are you saying us from? Is it from the throat? Or is
Oh, I
it,
see. I see.
or is it from the pit of the stomach, the lower abdomen, or what's called tanden in Japanese? And it's got some Buddhist connections. It's a form of breathing from the pit of your stomach.
Yeah.
You know, and we do ibuki, right?
Yes.
And when we do sanching, right? When we do
Mm.
that, you might notice that people want to sound cool. They get that husky sort of exhaling
Yeah.
voice, but you can tell whether is it coming from the throat or is it coming from the pit of the stomach. And he goes, when you're saying us, you should be driving the air out from the pit of your stomach. And he goes, what that does is it expands the diaphragm and you're working your core, you're working your lower abdomen. So don't just say it because I'm the Shihan doing this.
Yeah.
Don't just say it from the throat. Say it from the pit of your stomach, and it's actually a workout. It's serious intention on one
Nice.
side, but physically you're actually training by saying us from the pit of your stomach. So that was, you know, once he said that, the actual depth of the us from everyone just changed.
Right.
Okay, so that was one thing that I thought it's common sense, but unless, and he goes, he goes, this is where you're unlucky. He goes, I'm giving you the answer here. He
Yeah.
said Sosai would just
Yeah.
say, you know, stop saying us from the throat. And he wouldn't go into that full-on explanation, right?
Yeah.
He goes, we have to work it all out for ourselves. He goes, and he goes, so what I'm giving you here is my time with Sosai and what I took away as the original Kyokushin that he wanted me to do.
Right.
So everyone was in the right frame of mind. And I tell you, when you start saying this from the pit of your stomach, you're sweating just from that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
when you just said that, I aligned myself already.
Yeah.
From my belt to my sternum, you know, everything just felt all right. Align myself. Get on
yourself, right? And I mean, it's something simple, but that's a great way to tell the students, you know, that it's not how loud you are, it's where it's coming from. It's naturally going to be loud if it comes from the pit of your stomach, but it's actually of benefit to you, not just benefit. It's not a hierarchy thing.
No,
because us is not a hierarchy thing. He says, get that out of your head.
Yes.
It's part of your training.
Yes.
And he goes, so, and we were like, okay, wow. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
But then the next thing, the big thing he talks about is shoulder blades.
Okay.
And what I mean by that is closing one to open the other. And the way he explained it, so we were doing chudansuki, right?
Yes.
And he says, where's your hikite?
Mm-hmm.
Your retracting hand. He goes, now where's your elbow?
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, as you pull it back, some people get these chicken wings happening,
Yes.
or, you know, and this is a pet hate of mine. You see people, and like even Udansha, you know, they go through the motions and the hand stops here. Right. Next time, have a look at your front line, see if they're doing it. And he goes, right. He goes, now, is the elbow tucked in?
Yes.
Pointing towards, so if it's your left hand hikite, is it pointing towards the right shoulder blade?
I gotcha. Yep.
That's what you should be doing.
Yep.
He said, what Sosai used to say was, you're overextending. He goes, the only thing he would say to us is, you're overextending your shoulder, you're punching shoulder. And that means this lean forward.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, and you see this, how people rock when they do that, which is another thing I hate. But
of course,
he goes, right, as you're coming through here, this is, so you can't see it now.
Correct.
Putting back, which is closing the shoulder blade. And he goes, the next task is to stop here. So you'll see my shoulder isn't out like this.
Yes.
It's still here.
Gotcha.
But the shoulder blade is open. So what's happening is this shoulder blade's closing to allow you to get a full stretch on your striking side to open up. And that rounds, he goes, you can feel it coming around. And he goes, and that's what Sosai meant about not overextending the shoulder. and that's in Kihon. He said so, and he goes, it's an easy extension to when you come to kumite no kamae. When you punch, you don't get into this habit of overextending, but rather closing the shoulder blade. And Takuma talks about this, Koketsu Shihan, right? He
Gotcha.
talks about this as well, about pulling the shoulder in. He got that from Hasegawa.
Of course.
So, you know, I mean, the
Yeah,
proof
yeah,
is
yeah.
it actually relates quite well to a judo philosophy, right?
Ooh.
And in judo, they talk about it's called what is it? Seiryoku zenyo is an expression they use. And you may have heard it in English, minimum effort, maximum efficiency, right? So so going back to Yui Shihan, he was saying if we can minimize the effort, which means effectively knowing how your body works, you're going to maximize the power without having to overextend, without pushing your shoulder out, which Sosai hated, right? So it's all about this control.
Right.
So when you're sitting there and you're trying to do this,
Yes.
and you're so aware of not just where this hand is, but what it's doing to the shoulder blade to close it, to give you that extension here, rather than leaning in like this.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So and
You're
he was
doing
all
that
about
now. No doubt.
big movements in
Yeah.
Kihon, right? And he said that big movements, and you know, he said going back to the different originals of Kyokushin,
Yes.
he goes, he can see, you know, so much change over the years. He goes, but one thing he wanted everyone to do in the training was in Kihon to really emphasize big movement. Now we talk about koshi no kaiten, or that hip, you know, sort of turning the hip, right, to create that power. He goes, that's fine. And he says, when we come to fighting, it's smaller movements. You know, this soto uke, he said, you know, again, you're closing the shoulder blade, and then this one's opening. And then you keep it open all the way through.
Nice.
Open all the way through. And then at the end, let your hips do the work. So it's here, and it's not this short movement that we see people doing, but it's this big movement here and then the twist at the end.
Nice.
And he goes, that's where you've got to be aware of what's happening at the back here. If you've got chicken wings here, right? If you've got this shoulder blade open and this shoulder blade open, and you're trying to do this big movement, the muscles in your back are being stretched. So again, you're losing power. There's no maximum
Yes, of course.
efficiency happening.
Yes.
It's minimized. And this was the things he was doing. And so, you know, and he goes,
Wow.
well, let's look at Gedan Barai, same thing, you know. He goes, and there's so many different ways to do it. And this was the thing, he goes, and there's different ways to do it. He said, Sosai went through different, what's the word, preferences or different styles of Gedan Barai. And he said, it's now this, you know, where we come up here. Again, we're trying to keep this shoulder blade closed. This one's open to get that maximum extension there. And then we rotate the hip this way while staying forward and coming down. This remains closed. It's easier said than done. But, you know, and it was a mind game throughout the whole seminar. It was like, okay, talk to your body. What's happening? What's happening? And there were buckets of sweat on the floor, and we were only doing Kihon.
Yeah.
I hate to say that, but we were
No.
only doing Kihon, but it felt like we'd been through a 5-hour session because you were so focused, you know?
And just giving you some air there, because of it just being Kihon, you've made me, with the theme that he built at the start, we're a motor, and we're gonna put, and like a car enthusiast would do, they would take every screw out, every part out, and clean it and tidy it up and make sure it's clean, not just, oh yeah, I cleaned it. Did you clean it? Did you clean it, or did you just fucking look at it and go, she'll be right? And then if she'll be right, will it be the same oiled machine as to when you got it to begin with? And what a beautiful reminder it's given me of Kevin Plank, the founder of Under Armour sports brand, I used to work for them. He said the following, and it blew my mind. He said, "You can get it done, but did you get it done? And there are people that go, I got it done. Did you get it done?" And he goes, and then there are people that get it done, and done. That's what it's just given me. It's you can get it done. We're going through that. I feel I'm part of that. Hey, we get it done. We do the Shihan. And then there are some, did you get it done? Maybe those that are going for grading get it done. And then there's Shihan Yui. Did you get it done, and done?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that felt that.
But and he shared all of these things, and I mean, it was like, so going back to that get bara, he goes, the stock standard one is up here and down. He said, but old school Kyokushin, you see some people and the way they did get bara back in
right.
their
Yeah.
was up here. Remember that this one here and coming down, right? And he said, and then there was Sosai's get bara for a while, which was this, and you see footage of it, right? He goes, if you want to be Sosai, do it. He said, but be aware of what's happening at the back here. He said, because it looks relaxed, but he said, Sosai just had this knack of knowing what was happening with each part. And so, he went through this and he went through the others, and we went through each technique.
Yep.
And so he would explain it, and then we'd maybe do 20 or 30. Okay, but he'd get us to do 10 first, and he'd be looking around. And he'd go, okay. So, and he never asked anyone any questions per se. They were more rhetorical questions. He goes, okay, so what's happening, everyone? Okay, so here's another point of reference for you. This time, I want you to really retract that hand so you're actually pushing the elbow back in.
Okay.
And just focus on opening this up, because you've done these techniques a million times. But now, like you said, we're taking each part out and we're polishing them, we're cleaning them. Okay. And if you can take something away from that, great. So we went through all of these different things.
Of course.
And it was just amazing because there's the Shihan from Poland. His name escapes me right now. He's with Kyokushin, so Peter Chong Kancho now, I think it is, out of Singapore.
Okay. Yep.
He was over just to attend that training session. And so, Yui Shihan's he doesn't care, which faction you belong to, as long as you've got that serious attitude towards.
Yes.
And so he shared that with us. We did the Shihan, we went through that. And at each time, he'd get us to do 10 techniques, and then he'd say, okay, this time tweak it this way. Okay, what's happening? And then we'd do 30. And that's where the pools of sweat, just intensified. So it was great that way. And it was great to see everyone. You could see at the beginning, they had come to get this information, but at the end of it, the look in their eyes was different. It was sort of like, wow, I've just gone through a reawakening, and everyone took something away different. And he would say at different times, he goes, what you choose to take away from this is up to you. My mission, he said, is to deliver what I think should be, for myself personally, maintained as part of Sosai's teachings, Sosai's legacy. And, like I said before, he'd always say, but Sosai didn't give us the answers. And again, you're unlucky today in a way that I'm giving you the answers. So you've lost that chance to self-reflect. And that reminded me of, and it's one of my favorite mottos of, the 11 mottos that Sosai created, but the one that I always go back to is the one that talks about self-contemplation or self-reflection as an opportunity to further improve, and that's something we can take out of karate and put in, I'm at university, I'm always telling the students, because I get them to do different things,
right?
But they might do presentations of their research for me, and I'll go, okay, great, you've finished it, but let's look at it in terms of self-awareness. Okay, and I actually use Shihan Cameron's
Mhm.
3 questions. He talks about what did you do well?
Yeah.
Start with positive self-awareness.
Yes.
What didn't go so well? What are you going to do about that?
Yeah.
But that links nicely to Sosai's motto of self-contemplation.
Gotcha.
So reflect on it. And this is what Uchi. So everyone says the same thing. It's the language of Kyokushin.
Yes.
They're speaking it and they're saying, okay. And you can see people taking notes,
Yes.
at the end of it, they're trying to remember everything.
Mm.
And he goes, you can take all these notes. He goes, but you got to feel it. You got to feel
Yeah.
it physically. And he said,
Agree.
once you wrap any belt around your waist, you've got a responsibility. And this is where I've got it from. I got that from Yui Shihan. What value do you add to that?
Yeah, I like
whether
that.
it's a blue belt or yellow belt or green
Yep.
belt or white belt, whatever belt it is, or whatever done you are.
Yep.
You never forget that you're adding value to that grade you are at that time. So that was the tone. And then he went into other different things. He goes, Sosai would always be challenging us. And he didn't have anything on hand to actually physically show it, but he created this image. He goes, so one day, go into the dojo, and Sosai brings down the thin paper that, on the traditional Japanese doors, they have that thin Japanese white paper.
Yep.
That's very easy to poke your finger through.
Yep.
It's very easy to tear.
Yeah.
He goes, what would happen was that, so we were doing we were doing Ido Geiko, right?
Uh-huh.
And he goes, right, again, this time we're looking at the lower half of the body. Where are your feet? And, I don't know about you, but, I guess when we go into Zen Kutsudachi, there's a habit of our rear foot sort of pointing to about 2 o'clock.
Yes.
Or 45-degree angle,
Yes.
And I'm guilty of it. I've said it in the past. He goes, no, that's one angle that you might end up in, but that's not the angle you should start at. He goes, and what Sosai used to make us do, he goes, he used to bring sheets of this thin Japanese paper used for the doors, put it on the dojo for Ido Geiko, and he said he used to get a bucket of water, and he would flick water on the paper, and he said we had to stand on the paper, and we had to glide through Zen Kutsudachi from one movement to the other without trying to rip it. Now, I don't know about you, but and Yui Shihan said, he goes, it was near impossible unless you got the perfect movement through. And he said what he took away from that, because Sosai would never give him the answers. He goes, oh, look, you ripped it again.
Yeah.
He ripped it again. He goes, I don't know how much money he spent on that paper. He said he must have had a factory for it. But he said, but we then had to go back and sit down. He goes, so I sat down and I thought about it. And then, I bought myself some thin paper and I practiced it myself. But he said, in Zen Kutsudachi, when you go back, he said, it's not a matter of turning this front foot and then gliding through. He said, from your core, you are looking to go forward in one smooth, singular motion. You're not hearing that thumping on the ground. You're gliding across the floor. And when you can do that on that paper, you glide on top of the wet part of it and it doesn't rip. He said, and that's what you aim to do.
Right.
And, in the dojo, I hear people stepping from one point to another.
Yeah.
Don't thump, So that was another thing,
You've raised another thing to give you a breather there, which is really cool, is again, so for everyone to keep in mind, the dojo floor, which again, I'm on a bit of a high because I was on it last week. And I said to you and the others, I said, I felt like a ballerina out there. I really did. Now, the reason is, it's a couple of reasons, but the main one is we're so used to using the mats, the tatami mats, the 40 mil rubber mats. And that's been 95% of my training for 25 years has been on those things. And there is moments where my dojo here in the Surf Coast is in a hall, is in a community center, and we have not floorboards, but wooden floors. And we get to move. And then when it came to Honbu, oh man, the ease of, and again, the ease, because my feet weren't jarred up and jammed in, and the wise men, the Shihans, have always grabbed me and gone, you know, these things are the reason, these things as in the mats in the dojos are the reason why our knees are shot. And it's like, probably why your hips are jammed and your feet are jammed. And then you got Sosai and Yui training on hard wood / dojo floor for such a long time, and having that method of training, right? You know, you see it in footy. I saw it yesterday. My team was playing. They're slipping all over the joint. And I'm there going, oh, I think you tend to forget how important it is to keep your feet. And there was another rule that Sosai said in a video or a book. The one that loses balance on their footing is the one that loses.
Yeah.
Crucial.
So, and it all comes back to the core, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, sort of, you know, we're talking about your center of gravity,
right?
You know, how you sit relaxed into a stance, or how you actually sit into it, you know, how you drop your weight. Kokutsudachi is, you know, I mean, and this reminds me of something else he was talking about too. You know, like shitomawashi uke, right? Coming through. He goes, there's different versions for that.
Yeah.
You know, Sosai used to
Love
have
to
this
hear this.
version where you would do this with your hand.
Yes.
Come through. He goes, there's others where you have your hand over, you come through, and then you glide through. He goes, so again, different originals.
So I do that one.
Try and do this one. And he got us to try and do this. So you come up.
Yes.
And honestly, trying to keep these hands together like this, and then to come through. And he goes, you know, and this is a technique itself, you know, coming through. He goes, don't come up here and then just flick it out like you're flicking bird shit off your fingers. He goes, it's not that. It's a whole, that mawashi. And I'm a stickler for this. You know, when I see people coming up and then they do this, you might as well be doing some kind of traditional festival dance here. You know, just flicking hands out.
I'm not sure if you know the history of it, but when we've done that motion, it feels like a sword motion, that you have a weapon in your hand before you have, so that, you know, that you see the samurai like this, boom, in pictures of that, holding it strong high, and then you know that motion.
It can be interpreted as so many things. It can be interpreted as a catch and a throw. You know, it can be interpreted as a way to getting close for closer infighting. So you're suckering the other person. But again, it's coming from the hips. And so if you're not sitting down in kokutsudachi when you're doing it and letting your hips do it, and again, you know, what's happening in the back here? You know, if you're just doing this, there's no movement in the back. The way you train. So this one, as you're coming back, you're closing the shoulder blade. You're opening this one up. As that opens, then you're then closing it to allow this to come over. Again, what's happening at the back there? You know, so he went through all of that, which was, I know it's common sense, but when you start to break it down that way, it's.
I just want to raise something on that, because it was trained and it was dissected from Shihan Yui. For those that haven't grappled, now there's many means of grappling, but in grappling, right, in stand-up. So I do this drill at my dojo now due to the training I do with jiu-jitsu, and that is we stand up, we're in a fighting stance, but we start to grab into each other's gi, or we start to just use the shuto, not as a strike, as a gripping method, right? So you can tuck in, you can move around, and just using that motion, and then using the ura, you know, just turning and just, it is a drill. And and you got to warm into it. Don't go aggressive or too hard, but you want to appreciate and understand it a little bit more detail. Now, this is me being naive in training, meaning I haven't had sessions with the Yui Shihan, but I've used it to implement our training as okay, we're so heavy with it in the kata, you know, bang, use the circular, guys, circular. Okay, great, no worries. We show it off. Now do it in a form of training of gripping and grabbing and tussle work. And I use it a lot. As soon as someone grabs my gi, boom, it just drops straight in, and you go, "Oh, fuck, I think I've heard him. I've got to be careful
Yeah,
here."
and then again, if you're not opening up the shoulder blade there, you're not
fun.
doing it in full motion, and that's where Yui Shihan will talk about these big motions in Kihon, and you can make them smaller depending on,
Yes.
the distance between your opponent or the people you're training with. I mean, just look at judo, right? Like, and
Yep.
again, we get into a different conversation here. Another one of my pet hates is, and I'm glad you brought it up. So you're doing jiu-jitsu, right? You're doing Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right? Okay. People fall in love with that. They fall in love with different other martial arts as well. And each martial art has its own awesomeness, as I like to call it.
Correct. Correct.
And, keep your eyes open. And I'm forever, getting my knickers in a twist when people start to bag one because they've started another. No, look at how they complement each other, or they, things you can take from one to
Exactly.
bring back into your base, right?
Correct.
And that's where cross training is really good.
Correct.
We've got to keep an open mind, but by doing another, you can actually see how it exists
Oh
within,
yeah.
right? So your example is
I love
classic.
it. Yeah.
And this still, right? Like Hasegawa Soshi used to do this all the time, where we would train and
Yes.
he would do this, yeah, you've done it right.
Yeah.
The flicking of the hand.
Mhm.
But it was a kumite style shitomashi, right? But it was to knock the guard down.
Back attack.
But then, yeah, you knock the front hand down, the leading hand of your opponent.
Yep.
Then you would just drive the forearm into their neck.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And he's driven his forearm into my neck so many times, he's not, yeah, I mean, he's basically knocked me out a couple of times just by hitting me on the button there, right under the jaw, bang. So a block is a strike, etc. and so forth, that old cliche, but it is. And I mean, people bag bunkai or whatever. Yeah, no, bunkai is great. If you can look at a kata,
Yeah. Yeah.
take one portion out and say,
Yep.
well, no, I'm not going to stay in this stance, but I'm going to use this technique in this way. Is it practical? So again, going back to you, Shihan, making us question why we're
Yes.
doing
Yes.
that. So this strike down, if you're close enough, bang, that goes straight into the neck, under the jaw. Jordan is a classic as well. That's a strike that comes into the throat if you want it to be. So, there's not one set way.
It's fun.
There's a multitude of, options. But the core thing here is keeping it practical. And yeah, we do the big movements in Kihon.
Yes.
Then we can adjust, and this is what Yui Shihan was saying throughout. Do the big movements here, so you're forming good habits with your core. And he went on to, so we were doing Mayu Keages, right?
Mm-hmm. Kicks now, yep.
So we did half Zenkutsudachi, and we're all standing here.
And
he goes, okay, right. So the challenge here is not how nice and pretty and straight you can get this. It's the control coming down. So as you go up, he goes, that's only half of it. He goes, that's the easiest part.
Sure.
Right? He says, what's important here is how much control you have on your core and around your hips.
Yes.
As you come down. You control, because it's gone up so fast, it's going to come down fast. But if you're saying us from the belly, let's call it that, you've got a strong lower abdomen. You're constantly thinking about how all of your joints and your tendons and all of that are working. He said then you can focus on controlling it, and so you bring it up, and then he purposely made us bring it down really slowly. And he goes, the challenge is here to make no sound when you hit the floor. And A, when your foot comes back down, and then B, when you go through to the southpaw stance of Han Zen.
That's great to hear. I smile because, with all respect to whoever said it in a seminar or whatever, wherever I was land your foot as if it's landing on a rose petal, and don't break the rose petal. Don't rip it. Back to the paperwork concept. Don't fucking, okay, if it's a rose petal, and then when you think of a rose petal, you think soft beauty, if you touch it, bugger. So yeah, that's cool to hear as well. That's good.
So, I mean, in the modern age, what does this mean? Yui Shihan didn't say this, but this is what I took away. We've got phones.
Yes.
We've got, oh, you can't even see it now. Okay, all right, yeah.
Yeah, there it is.
You got phones, you got video cameras, you got whatever. Okay.
Yes, yes.
You can go to these seminars, you can get all these tips. But the thing is, you go back is how do you sort of absorb that for you?
Yes.
And self-analysis, I think, is a big thing. So
Oof.
video yourself and sort of, when you want to work on these things, how does it actually look? Put your phone on, a bookshelf or whatever, do your kihon, and then have an honest look at yourself and go, okay, where's my hikite? Okay, yeah, are my movements big or small? Are they constrained or are they, and what did I feel during that time? Do it there and then. Don't look at it next week. Look at it straight after. I mean, this happened. Just look at high performance sport. You with basketball,
Yeah.
the things are done with rugby. Like
Oh
they're
my God.
always on their tablets going, okay, right, what went well then? Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I'm looking balanced there.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing, but you're just looking at it by yourself and you're going, well, okay, yeah, I look like shit there, but good. Now I know what to polish. You know what I mean?
Reason for mirrors, and the mirrors in ballet studios and the mirrors that were in dojos that would fog up, but reason for those mirrors, that was an old school way of looking into the mirror personally, life. Remember, and now in your training. Oh, and with basketball, my goodness, I would have to go in on a Monday morning for 1 hour to dissect tape. Why? And there was a means along this line for everyone to understand. Why are you going that way? Why did you make the decision to go that way? Can't you see that someone's here? Why are you slowing down? Push. Oh my God. It gives me
Well, I
flashbacks.
mean, and the tournament we've just been a part of, and the wonders of YouTube now, it's all up there. Okay.
Yep.
For example, Scott, one of your students,
yep.
Yes. Love the guy.
Yeah.
Love the guy.
Yeah.
I hope he'll be watching. I know he'll be watching.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying this, but his attitude, like
Yes.
the fight didn't go the way he wanted it, and yeah, okay, he copped one on the neck,
Yep.
and saw a few tweening birds floating about.
Yep.
So what?
Ball being there.
There's parts of his fight, and I've gone back and watched it a couple of times, and I go, man, he's got so much potential. Now, if he goes back and looks and looks at it and goes, okay, what was I doing well there? So that's one way of looking at it. Okay, how's the other guy fighting? That's another, you look at it millions of times.
Yes.
Each time look at it with a different set of eyes. First time, look at what you're doing. Okay. How did I react to that person? So you just set your eyes on yourself. 2, look at how the other guy sets up the fight. So that's another viewing session.
Yeah.
3rd time, look at it as in its entirety in terms of how the time went by, how you're moving around the mat. And each time you look at it, you can look at different things. And that's what I hope he does, because
yes, for sure,
there were some great parts of his fight. I thought looking, man, okay, if he gets some work-ons, that he can create himself, or you can give him some advice, that analysis is gonna feed into his next adventure on the mat. You know what I mean? So it's an opportunity to learn, but you've got to ask yourself those questions. And that's just one person. We can all do it,
Yeah. That point alone is also the reason behind the theme, or I guess the purpose of, we call it the why. Why are you doing this? Why did you set your foot in the dojo tonight?
Yeah.
Why did you do that? And I say it in a why. I said, I know my why. And then back to what probably Shihan Yui is building the theme on Sosai. Why are you here?
Yeah.
And if you don't know why you're here, how are you going to be able to answer or try and reflect and build upon this? And then he gave them, we call it the back of the book answers, right? Don't go to the back of the book for the answers. Mate, you can pass. You can pass. Okay, great. But you can't bullshit a bullshit artist. You can't bullshit a bullshit artist. So, the Aussie way of saying that is, you can't fool our Shihans. You can't fool the next ones below. Don't try to fool, because then you're fooling yourself. You're kidding yourself. And those, you can see it in Shihan Yui's in his pedigree of his presence, you know, in being around him the other day. I'm not here to fuck around. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for, you know, he does have time. He's explaining it, but he's like, come on now, guys, dig deep, go further. And having people like that around you makes you want to get better. It's,
exactly.
you know,
He doesn't sugarcoat anything, but he doesn't. The one thing, the other thing I would say, you know, in the future, if anyone has a chance to come to Japan and train with him, because his door's always open, is that, well, he doesn't sugarcoat anything, but he doesn't talk down to you. He will look at what you're doing and say, okay, that's one way of doing it. Now try it this way. How does it feel? Okay, that's up to you to search for those answers. And that's his whole, he's got there's an aura about him, in terms of he was at the front the whole time doing everything with us. So he leads by example. He's not just explaining it and saying, okay, give it a try. He'd show and he'd be doing the full count with us.
Right. Awesome.
And
how old is he, Shihan? How old is he? And is this his job? Is this his day to day?
61 now.
Okay. Is this what he does? Is this his living?
So Yui Shihan, for the longest time, so he was with Kyokushin for quite a while as well. Okay. And then he was with Aiko Sosai for a little while.
Yep.
Then he said, okay, what am I going to do? And he's into actually power stones. So he's into that kind of, he's a spiritual person, but he's not and I hate to use this word, he's not a basher in terms of, right, this is the only way to think about it.
That's it. Yeah,
he's got his own thing. So he goes overseas. Well, he did for the longest time. He went to America and he'd go to different parts of America where there's all these power stones, and then he makes different kinds of jewelry out of it, bracelets, necklaces, but it was supposed to be some kind of spiritual healing thing.
Yep.
And so that's what he does. He goes around all these different, I guess, markets for that kind of stuff around Japan.
Yep.
So that's the one way he earns his money.
Yeah, I gotcha.
For the longest time, he had a full-time dojo, and so that was his bread and butter for the longest time.
Gotcha. Yep.
Now he's got, a small group of students. He's not about having a big dojo with lots of people. He just wants a core group of people that are serious about what they do, and for a while, he changed the name of his dojo to express that part of his journey. So he gave himself his own independent name. He didn't use the Kyokushin name. But then a meeting with Hamai Shihan, who passed away at the end of last year.
Yeah.
Convinced him to say, well, hey, even though you have your own independent name now, you've never stopped teaching Sosai Karate. How about using the Kyokushin name again? And so he went under the Hamai faction, which is a very serious sort of
cool.
In any way or form, trying to have a million dojos, but just a core group of serious people. So he realigned under that umbrella. So he's wearing a Kyokushin dogi again.
Good.
So that's what he's doing now. Yeah,
that's cool. Wow, there you have it. That's really cool. Really cool. Thank you.
So I mean that's how it ended. I mean, and we went through some yakusoku kumite at the end, and we'd done the Ido Geko, we did kata, and he goes, okay, so now every time you do something, whether it's kata, whether it's kumite, whether it's Ido Geko, whether it's yakusoku kumite, whether it's kihon, think about these points, that I was fortunate enough to learn from Sosai, that he made me think about, and I've given you the answers to today, he said. He goes, but question what you're doing now more in your own training, and if you can use one or two of these things to help you, then you carry on the torch, and that is part of another generation of original Kyokushin. As long as you're serious about it, as long as you're doing it to improve yourself, that's going to be conveyed to the people that you interact with through your training. And he goes, and that's all I want you to take away. So it was
music to my ears. That's
I mean, it's mind blowing in a way, because he motivated us to think about what we were doing. He led by example, and he gave clear enough explanation that you could set your own goals afterwards. But it was a great training session in terms of, like you always say, Pat, the secret is in the sweat.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's part of it. But
yeah.
are you sweating for the right reasons?
Why are you there?
Is the way he terms it, right? Are you sweating because you're working your whole body, you're doing everything as properly as can be? And so that's what I took away from that session. Just thought I'd share some of that with you.
Well, thank you for that. It's look at that, an hour and again, and I know we could go further with it, meaning because it's succinct, it's detailed, it's analytic of it, and in summary, you did a great job, and well done to you. Tapping me on the shoulder for this one, because it could, because it does. It goes a week, and even when we've done seminars in the past, and you do did you take your notes, and you go, oh shit, no, I didn't.
Yeah.
Or I've got a bit of it up here. And this is another key thing that I kind of say to my students is, if you're at work and that hey, we've got this special person coming in today and they're here to explain some things in regards to improving you, making you be better, in regards to all those things, and then you leave going, oh, that was great. Good. Oh, did you get something out of it? Yeah. Again, did you get it done? Yeah, I got a couple of things out of it. Should be fine. And then they come back around and then they go, how many people worked on the following? And you're like, oh, shit. Now we train 2-3 times a week for some at the dojo. And that is the fun bit of, I guess, your grade and those above that sundone phase. And that's something how you go, how are you going to add value? It's things like this. And Shihan really, you see him come into the dojo. He's like, I'm not here to lift my leg up. You should be able to lift your leg up. I'm here to have a look at what you're doing. Why? Because once you pass on your bad habits to others, we're in trouble. We're in deep trouble. And that's where I say I use the word, we have to hold the line. And I was telling the new Sunduns, you were doing a good job in holding the line. Now you have to, be as polished as you can be in making sure that no things sneak in. But I'm loving that engine concept. I've got some things out of that.
The engine, and another one, just to finish up on, is the concept of, it's called shoshin in Japanese, and it means, well, so loose translation is beginner's mind.
Great.
And I felt like a beginner again, even though I was there in an interpreting capacity.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
I love being put in that position where I can be, it was like I was wearing a white belt.
Beautiful.
And I loved it. And like you said with your cross training, going in, I remember you talking about that before. But if we can go into each session when we're just training, not when we're instructing, but even when we're instructing, I guess, if we can go in with part of us thinking, okay, how can I improve on the last time? Empty your mind, and again, who gives a toss how many stripes you got on your belt? The responsibility is holding on to that beginner's mind as much as possible, so that you're as strict on yourself as you are on others, but you're like a sponge and you're absorbing, because I can learn as much from my students, the way they interpret what I say. And this goes back to, what did you get out of it? Taking notes. And the thing is, you don't buy a book with it all written down. You write it down in your own words so that you can understand. But if you don't take notes, it's a lost opportunity. And I've got books of notes. I mean, I'm referring to notes. And this was something I did on the train on the way home, that day after I left your grading, is I wrote it all out, but it was in my own words.
Yeah.
And so I can go back to that and I can understand my own words. If it's written for us, it's other people's words. So the benefit of taking notes, like a training diary or whatever it is, when you go to seminars, journal, a little journal. So think, what did you take away?
Okay, and I'll put a bow tie onto it, like I like to end it with. The reason I went am doing jits, and again, when you get to Shodan Nidan, there is a part of different athlete students that go, okay, what can I add? And some do weapons, some do continue to fight. I was in the fight channel. I continued to fight to Nidan Sun up to that. Then the other things that, and my point is, when I go to jits, the first year of doing it, I got in trouble, not from the teachers or students. I got in trouble with myself because all I was doing was being a sponge and going, yeah, choke me. I want to see how it feels. I need to see how it feels. And now into year 2 of it, now I'm doing it, 2 to 3 times a week in my lunch times. And now I can feel, like I said, I can feel where the kote is. I can feel where the jodanuke, instead of it being up, is going down into their throat. I can see where there's nakayubi ponken sliding through the neck. And so I do it. I get in the car. I've got about 4 to 5 minute window of just, and I go, got tapped. He grabbed my gi. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. And sometimes I do 2 or 3 and I go, that'll do. And I move on. And then I talk, excuse me, then I'm like driving home going, hold on, there's way more. I should be writing way more. Good problem for me, sitting in my job day to day, 12-hour days, and then being able to go outside of that. Sorry, I'm drying up there. So really great reminders there, Shihan. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate that. Yeah. Good stuff. Oh, excuse me. I don't have my water. But thank you so much. I can't wait to share this with everyone. There's lots to take out of it. Here I am about to say another summary, but I'm sure you guys got a lot out of it. Thank you, Shihan. We'll have a bit of a week and a bit off. I'm on holidays for a bit.
No worries.
And thank you for your time in getting this done for us, because it was very important, because we can't get Shihan Yui on. You've tried. It's just a whole bunch of reasons in regards to technology and time, but this was as good of a summary as not. And I hope we can still try and tap him on the shoulder, but if a great indicator of what you did on the week. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Everyone. Shihan Sean, thank you so much. Take care, everyone. See you soon. Off for a bit of a break and keep training hard, because I will be too. Everyone.